Brooklyn, home of the Brooklyn Cyclones, and tonight, and the 2015 FXFL season, the Brooklyn Bolts. Joined by Stu Johnson, I'm Sadiq Faruqi, welcoming you to ESPN3's presentation of the FXFL Game of the Week. You're watching the Brooklyn Bolts taking on the Blacktips. Brooklyn coming off their undefeated 4-0 campaign in the inaugural campaign of the FXFL. And Stu, we discussed this earlier on in the broadcast at the open of all the notable names on this roster in the league's second year of existence. Josh Freeman of the Brooklyn Bolts, the name that stands out most. 5 years in the NFL, formerly of Kansas State fame, and trying to find his way back into the professional ranks, starting at QB tonight for the Bolts. As the ball is fumbled on the ground, Blacktips say they have it. No indication yet. And it's going to remain with Brooklyn.
Well, as you might be able to tell watching at home, weather tonight is going to be a huge factor. There's swirling winds, there's very cold conditions, and there's driving rain. And that's the second fumbled snap on an exchange with Freeman under center. The first one led to a turnover on the other end of the field when the Bolts were in the red zone. They're fortunate to get the ball back here. It'll be 3rd and 11.
So 3rd and 11 for Josh Freeman and the Brooklyn Bolts. Josh Freeman, 4 seasons with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers before being traded to the Minnesota Vikings. Had cup of teas with the Giants and the Jets, and the pass is incomplete.
47.
Trying to find Avery Rigg, and that'll bring up 4th down for Brooklyn. As Stu, we said it, the weather wreaking havoc. It is cold, it is raining, and it is oh so windy here at Coney Island. For those of you who have never been here before, MCU Park in Coney Island, Brooklyn is located right adjacent to the water. So whatever the temperature is in New York City, figure it's going to be at least 4 to 5 degrees colder right by the water, especially on a night like this. And the winds playing all sorts of tricks. Both teams have had their issues fumbling. The Blacktips fumbling away possession on their first drive of the game, as this ball is going to take a Brooklyn roll and is down at about the 35-yard line, and that's where the Blacktips Stu will recover.
Well, and that's actually a very important play. With conditions like this, it's tough to flip field position because of the wind, and that punt taking a friendly roll for Cody Webster, and that at least pushes the Blacktips back into their own territory. And with no score in the game, special teams and field position is going to be very important with the weather as it is.
So Kevin Rogers of Blacktips
30-yard line spotting
will start this possession from the 30-yard line. Rogers at one point was on the Houston Texans roster. And the handoff goes to Dixon. Dixon is driven back, and there may be a loss of about a couple of yards on the play. But Stu, to recap, this is the opening night of the 2015-2016 campaign for the FXFL. And when you think about the mission of this league giving a showcase to players who have been on NFL rosters, players who are trying to find their way to the professional ranks, an opportunity to showcase themselves. And make no mistake about it, there are coaches at the NFL level, there are scouts that are watching these games. 2nd down, and at 12, handoff is to Lyle McCombs, and McCombs drives forward for a gain of about 4.
Well, you're right. There were 25% of the players last season who were on FXFL rosters got a call back to the NFL, either to join a practice squad or to make a roster, to be part of a training camp. So there are lots of evaluators watching these games, and there are a lot of hungry players out there looking for that second opportunity or that next chance to get back to the NFL, and this league provides them an avenue to do so. No team had more success last year than Brooklyn. The Bolts went 4-0, best record in the league. Entirely new team, though, this year, trying to get it done in week number 1.
So 3rd and long for the Blacktips. Handoff is to Dixon. He's not going anywhere, and that's going to be 4th down. So both teams trying to go and establish the run game. And a timeout is called. So I give us an opportunity to reestablish against the Faruqian Stu Johnson here on ESPN3 at MCU Park. It is a cold and rainy night here in Brooklyn. Of course, the threat of tropical storm, is it Joachim that is set to hit this area Monday night and Tuesday, and we have rain and wind forecast for the entire duration of this weekend, Stu, and we are seeing that on display this evening.
Yeah, it's been raining pretty hard here since just about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's supposed to continue right through the ball game tonight. No score in this one so far, and neither team has been able to throw the ball in these conditions with any degree of comfort. So we'll see if Josh Freeman and the Bolts offense, as they get the ball back, are able to mount any sort of attack here. And Drew Basil is going to be punting right into the wind.
And you say that term, punting into the wind, Stu, you can make the argument that tonight both teams are going to be kicking into the wind, as Kenzel Doe was back at the 40 to receive, and the ball sailing out at about midfield. And Brooklyn, for the third time this evening, Stu, are going to take advantage of a bad punt, and they're going to have great field position to start the drive.
Well, you shouldn't say that too loudly, because Drew Basil's been hanging out underneath our tent here to try to stay warm. It's a tough night to punt. It's a tough night to play quarterback. And the Bolts will have it at the 45-yard line. And so now they go to work. And with Josh Freeman under center, you are tempted to want to throw the ball because of what he profiles as. He has a great arm. He's 6'6". He's 240. He has the build of an NFL player, of a first-round pick, which he was. But on a night like this, your best friend may be your offensive line and your ground game. And we'll see if the Bolts are able to mount something on the ground to start off this series.
Freeman, the 17th overall pick in the 2009 NFL Draft, goes to the air and almost has it picked off. The pass was intended for Chris Dunkley, but it was almost picked off by Michael Lee, so the ball sailing out of Freeman's hands. And that'll bring up 2nd and 10. Josh Freeman, 2 seasons, throwing for over 25 touchdowns in 2010 and 2012. Stu, we think back to that 2010 season, Josh Freeman's second year, and really came into his own. And it was at that point that many thought this is going to be that franchise QB down in Tampa.
Yeah, he led the Bucs to a 10-6 record. He was an alternate for the Pro Bowl, and everything seemed to be looking up for him. But a lot of trouble with interceptions later in his career.
So on 2nd down, Freeman in trouble. Tries to dump it off, looking for Deshaun Fox. The Blacktips calling for a flag, and none coming. And that's going to bring up 3rd down. So both teams, Stu, we've talked about the weather, but both teams really unable to establish any sort of continuity on offense thus far.
Yeah, to this point, the only winner so far have been the elements, and at the moment, a lot of pressure being applied on Freeman, and that's something the Blacktips want to do regardless. A little bit of an undersized defensive line. They want to blitz a lot out of their 3-4 scheme, and that time they got right in Freeman's face. He stepped up in the pocket but got hit from behind. Now he's looking at a 3rd and 10.
Can you ask them to tell us how much time there is? Time? Can you dig?
So 3rd and 10 for Brooklyn. Freeman in the pocket, dumps it off for John Harris. A pick of about 3 yards. And that'll bring up 4th down, and Brooklyn will be forced to punt away. That was the first drive, Stu, where we really saw Josh Freeman trying to take the bull by the horns, and they're going to go for a field goal here.
Are they lined up for a field goal here? This would be – no, this is insane.
And it is no good.
At the distance.
What about been about a 63-yard field goal? It is no good. And we have seen just about everything here in the first quarter of play. Still no score between the Brooklyn Bolts and the Blacktips.
91.
That was Cody Webster, Stu, and that might have been the longest in-person field goal attempt I've ever seen.
And Cody Webster wasn't even a place kicker in college. We had him listed as the punter for the Bolts. He was the punter for 4 years at Purdue. Ty Long is supposed to be the place kicker, but Webster showed a pretty good leg on that one.
We've seen a defensive lineman take the kicks for the Blacktips, and well, they're going to start off at the 45-yard line. So Austin Rayner under center now for the Blacktips. Austin Rayner, we were talking to Coach Johnson yesterday, Stu. Said he's, of the two quarterbacks, has more experience, has more moxie, as he said. As the first handoff was to Lyle McCombs. So at the end of the first quarter, no score here between the Brooklyn Bolts and the Blacktips. We'll be back on ESPN 3.
Are we clear?
Are we clear?
The potential to make it back to the NFL. Had good coverage there and almost had the pick. Hit him right in the chest, just couldn't secure it.
So that'll bring up fourth down. Kenzel Doe back to receive for Brooklyn. As this is a much better punt. It's going to land at about the 12-yard line. So a much better job by the Blacktip special teams, and now Brooklyn will have a long field to operate with.
And it looks like everybody returning the punts tonight is just going to let the ball roll and not risk the turnover, which I think is probably wise. And we're going to get a new quarterback in here for the Bolts. The plan is for Brooklyn to give the first quarter to Josh Freeman, as they did, and then head coach Terry Shea gives the second quarter to Jake Heaps out of the University of Miami.
So Jake Heaps, who started his collegiate career, Stu, with BYU, would go a circuitous route going to Kansas, and then, as you mentioned, 3 games at the University of Miami, signed as a free agent with the New York Jets back just a couple of months ago.
Yeah, and Heaps was a highly touted recruit coming out of high school. He was the Washington State Player of the Year for football, and an All-American actually for high school as well. And had a bit of a circuitous route, as you mentioned, throughout college. But what Terry Shea said is that he has a very accurate arm. May not have quite the command of the offense Freeman does, but they like his ability to throw the ball when everything's lined up.
It's about 6 years ago, he was considered the #1 consensus high school quarterback in the nation out of Skyline High School in Washington. Led them to a pair of Washington State titles. But Brooklyn has a long field to work with, and the way that things have gone tonight, a long field might be a really tough task given the wind, given the rain, and given the way that the ball has just sailed, oversailed, undersailed. It has not really been a controlled passing game for either team, but now Jake Heaps in at quarterback, seeing his first action. So third down and about from the 16-yard line for Brooklyn. Heaps escaping trouble, just flushed out of the pocket, hit hard. And they're going to call a safety.
And they're going to rule out a fumble. He was hit, and the pass was not a pass. In fact, the ball came out of his hand before his arm was moving forward. It rolled out the side of the end zone, and it had that kind of feel tonight that the points that would come would be on special teams or through a mistake, perhaps on defense. And it's now a 2-0 lead after the strip sack and safety. Love the way the Blacktips dialed up some pressure that time. They smell blood with Heaps, and the Bolts backed up near their own goal line, and they took advantage to get the first couple points of the game.
So Jake Heaps facing high, intense pressure, getting hit in the ball. The pin in the end zone, a safety, and now the Blacktips will get the ball back. Up 2-0 here early in the second quarter.
You know, conditions like these, what's the worst that's going to happen? Nobody's going to take a shot downfield on you. So lock up man-to-man, bring some pressure, get into the backfield and be disruptive. This is a night to be aggressive defensively, and I think that was what made that third down blitz package especially smart.
It's the kind of nights, too, where we've seen the receivers play more of that blocking role, go out for passes at about 10 to 15, a lot of intermediary stuff. We haven't really seen too many wide receivers go deep, obviously, with the weather conditions as they are, as the Blacktips will get the ball back here up now 2-0. Lyle McCombs back to receive. And as we see the swirling winds wreak havoc on yet another kickoff. As Brandon Reddish, defensive back, kicks it out to about midfield, where the Blacktips will start from on their second drive of the second quarter. So the Blacktips up 2-0. Again, we welcome you to ESPN3's coverage of the FXFL. This is the opening game for the Brooklyn Bolts and the Blacktips, the second season of the FXFL. Sadiq Faruqi and Stu Johnson, glad to have you aboard. It is a cold and windy night here at MCU Park in Coney Island, Brooklyn, New York. As a handoff goes to Jason Isom, 6 foot, 235-pound fullback. Gain of 2, once played with the San Francisco 49ers, had a great career with the Cincinnati Bearcats. And it'll be 2nd and 8 for the Blacktips.
Now, I think the Blacktips are going to try to wear Brooklyn out tonight. 4 running backs who can handle the ball. The Bolts really only have 1. And at a night where running the ball looks like it's going to be the order of the day, expect the Blacktips to hammer this defensive line as much as they can.
Handoff goes to Rodney Barnes, a defensive back converted to running back, played in the CAA, rather the Atlantic 10 in Richmond. And Stu, weather aside, and again, this is a point that we brought up with Coach J.D. Johnson yesterday, and he admitted it himself. He's only been around this team now for the better part of a week. Keep in mind, Coach Johnson, coach of the Brooklyn Bolts, Coach Shea, last year with the Boston Brawlers. He was an offensive line coach and an offensive coordinator. There is a learning curve, learning your own players, getting familiar with them, knowing what it is that they can do. So when you have these kind of situations where a team is coming together, especially week and a half to prepare for the season opener, you're going to have a lot more intermediary stuff. You're going to have a lot more run plays. You're going to have a lot more of what we've seen tonight.
Yeah, it's all of that. It's not knowing your personnel that well. It's the weather, and it's the type of KISS strategy. Keep it simple, stupid. And they're on 3rd and 5. They didn't elect to throw the ball. They tried a little outside zone running play. Didn't get anywhere, and so on 4th down, they're forced to punt. Low snap there. Basil just gets it away.
That's what they did last time. They just wanted to pin the ball deep, something they were unable to do in their first 4 punts. So Brooklyn will start at their 35-yard line. Again, we mentioned J.D. Johnson.
No, it's
coached last year with Coach Shea. And
yeah, he was the linebacker and special team coach for the Boston Brawlers, and that was after spending 17 years coaching in college ball at the junior college ranks. And he couldn't have spoke more highly of Terry Shea, saying what a great teacher and mentor he was. As another snap is bobbled.
Ball's on the carpet, and it's recovered by Brooklyn. But the other thing he talked about regarding his experience at the junior college level and really how he drew a parallel to the FXFL, he likes the nurturing environment. He likes the developmental environment, something he's really been in the last 17 years and now having an opportunity here in the FXFL.
That's another mentoring development type of role. And this is his 2nd season coaching in a professional level and his 1st season being in charge of an operation. So he's excited about it.
So 2nd down, Jake Heaps under center for the Bolts. And the ball's on the ground again. And it looks like Brooklyn has recovered. So again, we've seen a lot of near fumbles. We've seen fumbles. And it's just a testament to the wet ball, wet surface, and wet conditions that we have here tonight.
We don't want to keep harping on it because there's a game to be played, but it does seem as though every other snap here, the weather impacts the play somehow. But to finish the point on Coach Johnson, The FXFL is a chance to develop players, but it's also an opportunity to develop coaches. And a lot of guys on these coaching staffs had NFL careers, so they didn't have a chance to be grad assistants or go the traditional coaching route. So this is a way to get into the ranks, and it's an exciting opportunity for them as well.
Third down, Heaps with another lost snap. Ball's in the end zone. It's going to be another safety. So the second, rather, it's going to be a touchdown recovered in the end zone by the Blacktips, as it's recovered in the end zone by Philip Stewart, rather by Chris Alvarez. And for the second straight possession, Brooklyn is pinned deep, and it leads to trouble. The last possession resulting in a safety, this one resulting in a touchdown, a defensive touchdown for the Blacktips, as that was trouble, Stu, from the snap, as Heaps really had no chance on that snap, and that ball trickled all the way into the end zone, and the Blacktips are there.
I mean, it's 3 fumbled snaps in a row, right, Sid? I mean, 3 straight snaps that he couldn't handle cleanly from under center, and now the Blacktips have scored 2 points on a safety, another 6 on a fumble recovery in the end zone for a touchdown. All their points are coming off of defensive plays, and I think now the question is, do you even try to kick it here, or do you go for 2? But this is our first look at an extra point, and this is something that the FXFL was out in front of the NFL on last year. They started the trend of having longer extra points, spotting the ball at the 17-yard line, and the NFL has gone that route now, I think probably in part by seeing how it played out here, made things more interesting, and it also increases the incentive to go for 2 instead of kicking that long extra point, especially in conditions like this. You never know what you want to do, and I think the Blacktips are going to try to go for 2.
Austin Traylor back on the field for the Blacktips, so indeed they are going for 2 here. Up 8-0, getting their points from their defense. Trainer the give is to Avery Rigg. Rather, Jason Isom, and Isom is in for the extra point, the 2-point conversion. And the Blacktips open up a 10-0 lead.
I mean, that's, again, keeping it as simple as you can. Just go a little bit of a read option, so you put the defense on notice, and it was a nice read that time from Trainer. He decided to just stick it in Isom's belly, let him go up the middle. And the double team from the center and guard allowed him to get just enough movement to get in for those 3 yards and add an extra 2 points to the Blacktips tally. And we'll kick off now with a 10-0 lead.
Second quarter of play here, the FXFL Game of the Week here at MCU Park, a cold and rainy MCU Park. We welcome you to ESPN3's presentation of the FXFL, the Brooklyn Bolts and the Blacktips, Sadiq Faruqi and Stu Johnson. Glad to have you on this Friday night, as the Blacktips have taken advantage on Brooklyn's last 2 offensive possessions, the last one resulting in a safety, rather in a touchdown, the one before that resulting in a safety. The Blacktips converting on a 2-point play. Touchback here as Brooklyn, maybe fortuitously, will at least start from their own 20-yard line, 25-yard line now. But again, Stu, we talked yesterday to the coaches about how they want to mix up their offense. As Josh Freeman will come back out on the field for Brooklyn, especially after the last 2 possessions. Coach Shea wanted to go back to his NFL veteran quarterback in Josh Freeman, trying to ignite this Brooklyn Bolts offense. Stu, what does Brooklyn have to do differently here? Get some points on the board.
Well, they've got to establish something on first down. They can't keep playing a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 behind the sticks. They've got to have 3rd down and manageable. So Freeman's going to have to get a little bit more time to create with a passing game, and they're going to have to block better up front.
The give is to Kua Cox. Rather, Ladarius Perkins. As Perkins gains about 4 on the play. Ladarius Perkins Coach Hay identifying him as the main threat out of the backfield, getting the majority of the carries so far here in the first half.
Yeah, and I would expect to see more of him. And what he did that time was a nice job of getting small. You know, he's only about 5'10", if that. And he was cutting back behind those big offensive linemen. Got a little bit down in his crouch, was hard to pick up, and he ends up getting about 8 yards on first down. Standout player in Mississippi State, still second all-time in all-purpose yards for the Bulldogs.
The pitch again to Ladarius Perkins, and he'll have the first down, carrying a pile ahead and driven out of bounds. So that'll be a first down for Brooklyn, and a welcome start to this drive, Stu.
Yeah, a little toss play to the right. They pulled Stephen Gooden from the line, and he got out and led the way. And that's a smart thing to do. They started with a little bit of a lead draw off to the left, let him cut back on the first running play, toss play out to the right. And the Bolts have a first down, which has been hard to come by so far tonight.
Is that their first or second first down? Is that their second or first? Is that their first down of the game?
So that is the first down of the game, as Brooklyn will have it on their own 40-yard line. Trying to answer two defensive big plays by the Blacktips. As a carry up ahead by Joey Yasofa. Rather, Ladarius Perkins again on the carry.
And what with two backs in the backfield that time, they had Perkins and Joe Don Duncan lined up as twin protectors on either side of Freeman. A little bit of misdirection, and they went right back up the middle with Perkins. And he's now getting into a little bit of a rhythm and picks up another first down for the Bolts, a 10-yard gain.
So a more promising drive here for the Bolts. After the Blacktips put up 10 points off a safety and a defensive touchdown as a carry by Manessa Garner. As Garner goes around the left side, picks up about a couple on the play.
Gardner's another guy who's going to see some touches out of the backfield. He went to Pittsburgh for college, got a couple looks with the Cleveland Browns, and he's a bigger guy, really more of a true fullback, 6'2", 220. And at Pitt, that was his role. He transferred from Wisconsin. Those are teams that like to run up the middle. Paul Chryst teams, ground and pound, two back sets, and he's going to get some looks as a fullback, but he'll also get some carries out of the backfield tonight, and he's going to stay in here on second down.
Manessa Gardner, truly a versatile player in his collegiate career, also played tight end and wide receiver. As a fumble on the play recovered, as Gardner had trouble corralling that, managed to keep it in his grasp and barrel forward for about a gain of 2 yards. Manessa Gardner, we talked about his sure hands. Started out at the University of Wisconsin as a wide receiver, transferred to his hometown University of Pittsburgh. Coach Shea said they're going to use him in the H position, but a versatile player, a big burly player, and we see in the last two plays him gaining about 5 yards, pounding it through the middle as we have a player shaken up. Victor Ayua, a linebacker out of the University of Washington, spent some time with the San Diego Chargers.
It's going to be a 3rd and 8 here for the Bolts, and this is, I think, the type of play in the game when you look to your tight end. And, boy, wasn't Terry Shea excited about his tight ends when we talked to him yesterday. He's got Andre Hardy, he's got Jordan Nyberg. These are two, in his words, NFL-style tight ends, 6'6". Hardy's 245, Nyberg's 260. They both have good hands. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them look Hardy's way here. He's going to be lined up on the right side of the line. They've actually got Nyberg attached or detached right behind him on the line as well. So those two guys to the near side might be somewhere to look on 3rd and long.
Freeman looking sideline and nobody there, as the intended recipient was Kenzel Doe.
I know Josh Freeman is a big arm, but tonight throwing to that wide side of the field in these conditions is not an easy throw to make. And that one was not the first throw we've seen from both teams to bounce well short of its intended target.
So that'll bring up 4th down as Brooklyn will punt this one away. Back to receive for the Blacktips will be Lyle McCombs. McCombs, the 5'8" explosive running back out of the University of Rhode Island, as
Webster drops the punt and has to fall on top of it, and it's yet another snap and another opportunity for the Blacktips off a Bolts mistake. just couldn't handle it. Had it in his grasp for a moment, dropped to the turf, and couldn't get the punt away.
So the Blacktips defense capitalizing on two separate occasions, and now the special teams gaining the Blacktips offense prime field position as they're going to start at the 40-yard line. Austin Traylor hands off for Dixon up the right side for a gain of about 1.
And a nice stop there made by Matt Henson coming out of the University of Rhode Island. And Henson is one of those guys who's a quarterback on that defense, a little bit undersized, but they play him inside like a Mike linebacker, and it's his job to get everybody lined up. It's also his job to diagnose blocking schemes like that, and he came firing through the A-gap and made a tackle for a loss of about 3 yards.
So on second down, Traylor looking deep, looking sideline, and nobody home.
Haven't seen a lot of shot plays today, but that was a look deep downfield for Royce Adams. And he's probably the receiver the Blacktips think is their best deep ball threat. He's certainly their fastest guy at wideout, but as he ran a corner route that time, not enough air under it, and that throw well over his head. Now we got a 3rd and 14, and this might be a time to play it safe if you're the Blacktips, given the way this game has gone.
So under 5.5 to play here in the second quarter from cold, rainy, and windy MCU Park in Brooklyn. 3rd and long, and as you said, they're going to play it safe. It's Traylor keeping it on the QB keeper up the left side, as he is clipped down for a gain of about 11 yards.
If he'd kept his feet, he would have gotten the first down, but he came up about a couple yards short, and this is a spot where you don't even think about it. You're keeping your offense out there.
So it's going to be 4th and 2. Traylor back on the sideline, perhaps getting instructions.
Stuck that right in the stomach of his running back, Trevor Barlow, and then decided to keep it off the left side. And he had plenty of real estate there, Sid. He could have kept going for a while if he hadn't slipped on the wet field turf here. And with the play clock winding down, looks like the Blacktips are going to burn a timeout before this 4th down.
So Blacktips will call a timeout with 4th and 2 upcoming. And a decision to make and see if they are going to go for it on 4th down. Sadiq Faruqi and Stu Johnson here at MCU Park in Brooklyn, New York. You're watching the FXFL Game of the Week between the Brooklyn Bolts and the Blacktips on ESPN3. This is the opening of the 2015-2016 season of the FXFL. And Stu, let's recap again. This league formed last year, giving an opportunity for players who have either been in the NFL, have been on NFL mini camps, training camps, or looking to find their way into the professional ranks, having a showcase. And again, this kind of a situation, this kind of a climate, weather environment, maybe not helping their cause, but the league doing a great job in facilitating a platform for these players to be seen.
Yeah, it's a mixture of old and young. You have those hungry guys who are right out of college who haven't gotten a chance to play in NFL games yet, but maybe came close in training camp. And you've got some veterans, the likes of Josh Freeman. Last year we saw Tim Hightower. Those guys trying to get their way back. It's an interesting combination of talented football players.
So on 4th and 2, the Blacktips are going to go for it. Traylor and McCombs in the backfield and a flag. And it looks to be false start, and that'll extinguish hopes to carry this possession on, as it'll be 4th and 7. And it looks like the Blacktips will be punting it away.
Take a timeout before your 4th down play, and you come out and have a procedure penalty, and then you got to send the punt unit out there. Not what Coach J.D. Johnson wants at all. And Basil's been pretty good when he's been asked to punt directionally from near midfield. A couple times he's pinned the Bolts inside their own 20, punting to that far side. And we'll see if he's able to knock one inside the 20 here. He was a place kicker at Ohio State. He hasn't punted much before, but tonight he's had his successful punts and he's had some tough ones.
Well, we're going to get a timeout here as Brooklyn will call a timeout. So there's 2 scores coming off great defensive plays by the Blacktips. A safety and off a miscue on a snap. don't think. Can you hear me? So 2 great defensive plays by the Blacktips, earning them this 10-0 lead as we play late in the second quarter from MCU Park. And you see the driving rain, the wind. In other words, ideal football conditions as Brooklyn, rather the Blacktips, will be punting away on 4th down. And this is an area, Stu, where Brooklyn has had their issues. Their starting position in 2 of their last 3 drives. As Basil feels it cleanly and just tucks it away. And it looks like it'll bounce. Is that in or out of bounds? Stays in at the 5-yard line, so an excellent, excellent punt by Basil. And again, he earns great starting position for the defense. And this is where we've seen the Blacktips have some success here in the second quarter.
Three, two.
Did he have me or not? I can't hear myself.
So it'll be 1st and 10 for Brooklyn as Josh Freeman back on the field for the Bolts. Freeman, the handoff to Ladarius Perkins up the left side. He picks up about 3 on the play.
Lost a couple yards there on that running play to the left. Perkins was able to get a little something going on that last Bolts drive. He picked up the first 2 first downs of the night for Brooklyn on his own, but backed up towards their own goal line here. There's just not a lot of options. You don't want to get too creative. Freeman and all the quarterbacks have had a hard time completing even short passes. So the Blacktips are going to get aggressive. They're going to crowd the box. They're going to put 7 or 8 guys in the middle to try to play the run. And it's going to be tough for Brooklyn to mount much on the ground with that type of front.
So Freeman trying to engineer Brooklyn out of trouble on the keeper. The handoff to Ladarius Perkins up about 3 yards. And giving Brooklyn some breathing room here as the Blacktips to have really cashed in on those last 3 goal line opportunities for Brooklyn, rather. This time, Brooklyn getting themselves out to about the 3-4 yard line.
And they've taken advantage of their opportunities. And at that time, a pretty good call, a draw play. And so they sold the pass a little bit and then gave it off to Perkins, got a little bit of a head of steam up the middle, and now it's going to be about a 3rd and 6 or 7.
So on 3rd down, a flag and a false start, and Brooklyn is going to be pushed back.
And the Blacktips that time showing blitz from right up the middle. They got a couple of linebackers over the center. Matt O is leading the charge. He's a Dartmouth guy, you know. He's a smart, cerebral linebacker. And he was getting in the head of the offensive line a little bit there, forced some movement before the snap. And when you can show pressure against an offense that's backed up in the shadow of its own goalpost, when they've already had a couple snap miscues in this part of the field, you know you're going to get them thinking a little bit. And that makes a 3rd and 6 into about a 3rd and 10 after the half the distance to the goal.
So Brooklyn working their way out of trouble, right back to it. So 3rd and 9 for the Bolts. Perkins trying to force his way up the middle and not gaining a lot there. It's going to be 4th down. So the Blacktips defense once again, Stu, creating that pressure right up the middle. And Brooklyn unable to really do much, starting deep as it is. And now the Blacktips will enjoy great field position here as a timeout is called.
Looks like that was an official's timeout. Player may have been down on the field. But I think that this is where it'll be interesting. If you're the Blacktips, you probably just go right after the punt here. I mean, I think you sell out on special teams and try to put as much pressure as you can on Webster to try to get a hand in his face and alter or block this punt. He's just got to catch and repunt. He can't really step into it at all from where he's punting in the back of his end zone.
Lyle McCombs back at the 45-yard line for the Blacktips. Not sure what the officials are cleaning up here, but it looks like play will resume as McCombs sneaks up to about the 42-yard line. As the punt is almost blocked, and that's going to take a bounce at about the 40 where it will be deaded. So it'll be at the 41-yard line where the Blacktips offense will start back up, enjoying a 10-0 lead. And another opportunity to keep the ball on the ground. And we'll step aside. We'll be back here on ESPN 3.
What the hell is going on?
I get
3, 2, 1.
1:54 remaining in the second quarter here at MCU Park. This is the FXFL Game of the Week. The Brooklyn Bolts and the Blacktips. Sadiq Faruqi and Stu Johnson. Please, you can join us on ESPN 3. As we were in break, Drew Basil, the kicker for the Blacktips, who's done a phenomenal job. The punter, kicker out of Ohio State, left the field with an injury. As the Blacktips are back out on the field, Austin Traylor presiding over this drive. So 1st and 10. Traylor looking sideline. And the pass sails over the head of Carrington Hanna. Hanna getting his name called for the first time this evening, the product of Sioux Falls University. And that'll bring up 2nd and 10.
Yeah, it's a tough night to negotiate a 2-minute drill because obviously you want to throw the ball, stop the clock on an incomplete pass. But tonight throwing the ball has just been almost impossible. And the Blacktips haven't really had much success offensively. If you're tuning in late, all 10 of their points have come on defense. They had a safety, and then they had a fumble recovery for a touchdown in the end zone. Their only 2 points were on the conversion, and that was on the ground. So this is a tough spot for the offense.
So 2nd and 10, the handoff is to McCombs. McCombs trying to go around the right edge. Knocked out of bounds at about the 42-yard line.
Yeah, that was a really athletic play by the Bolts linebacking core once again. And that looked like it was number 52, Matt Hansen, again, flashing to the outside, showing his speed in the open field and making the stop. And I think we also saw Mylan Hicks get in there as well, the defensive back out of Michigan State. And those two snuffed that play out for a big loss. Now a 3rd and 12 here.
So 3rd and long, Traylor pitches it ahead for McCombs. And that'll bring up 4th down. So much better job here by the Brooklyn Bolts defense.
That was Carliff Taylor, local guy. Grew up in Harlem, New York, and went to Cardinal Hayes High School in the Bronx. Played his college football in Connecticut, went to Southern Connecticut, and he is, I think, the defensive lineman that has impressed the most in the first 9 practices the Bolts had. And that's how I made the stop to set up 4th down.
So Kenzel Doe back to receive for Brooklyn. Trying to give the Bolts some good field position here. They have struggled with that in their last 4 drives. As Doe will watch it bounce around at about the 12, trickling to about the 5-yard line. And it'll be deadened at about the 6. And once again, Stu, Brooklyn will start a possession deep within their own end.
Now, Drew Basil's figured out how to deaden that punt and keep it from sneaking into the end zone. Did a nice job of it again there. And I think this is a part of the field and the time of the clock where the Bolts are just going to run the ball and try to get to halftime and maybe regroup and come up with a different offensive strategy. They've already given away 10 points in this side of the field, so with less than a minute to go, I think you play it safe.
All 10 points in this game.
12 seconds to go here in the first half.
All 10 points have come from the defense of the Blacktips. 2 points coming off a safety and then off a botched snap. Recovering it in the end zone. There's a fumble here. Which way is this going to go?
Blacktips have it.
So again, the Blacktips defense coming up huge so far in the second quarter. A safety, a fumble recovery for a touchdown, and now a fumble recovery deep. And a chance to tack on another score with under 10 seconds to go in the second quarter.
Well, I'm just very surprised at the play call. You're backed up at your own 6-yard line, and they went with a deep drop that time for Freeman. He got flushed to his right and then got blindsided and hit, coughed up the football. And this is another turnover like you were just saying, Sid. 5 seconds left. Now it's decision time. Do you try to kick a field goal in these conditions, get the extra 3 points, or do you take what would probably only be one shot at the end zone here and see if you can turn that into 6 or 7 points? At the moment, looks like they're going to send out the offense.
So with 5 seconds remaining, essentially one shot here as Austin Traylor with Lyle McCombs at his side. I'll see what they do here. Traylor will throw, goes to the corner, and it's caught in the corner. Touchdown, Blacktips. It was caught by Andrew Opoku, and with time running down in the second quarter, the Blacktips strike on a first receiving touchdown of the game. And they take a 16-0 lead.
And that should have been an interception. It was a fade to the far corner of the end zone, and the Bolts defensive back, Trey Wolf, had it bounce right off his chest, popped behind him in the air, and that's where it was caught. I mean, that's the first receiving touchdown of the game, and by rights, it looked like it was going to be potentially a pick six going the other way, 100 yards. Wolf couldn't catch it, deflected off his shoulder pads, and turns into a touchdown.
So James Lawson on for the extra point. As his bobble, it'll be smothered, and that is how the first half will end. There's 0.7 on the clock. But again, Stu, the story of this second quarter has been the defense for the Blacktips, forcing a safety, forcing a fumble recovery for a touchdown off a botched snap by the Bolts. And now forcing another turnover with under 10 seconds to go as the Blacktips cash in with the first receiving touchdown of the game. And they have a 16-0 lead.
Now, all the scoring has been set up by turnovers deep within the Bolts' own territory. And in the second half, they're going to have to regroup and get a hold of themselves. I mean, this is going to be, I think, probably a pretty animated Terry Shea in the locker room. And he's going to tell his guys that the second half is going to be about them. They gave away 16 points in the first half. They can get them back. This is not a game where they have been outplayed by any stretch. They've just made some mistakes.
So with 0.7 seconds remaining, Kenzel Doe back to receive for Brooklyn. Now let's see what he can do here on this last play. We'll see if there are any shades of Cal Stanford. Doe putting on the moves, finally brought down. And that is indeed how the first half will come to an end. It is all about the Blacktips defense. A forced turnover that they cashed in for a safety. Another forced turnover, they cash in for a touchdown. Another forced turnover that they cash in with the first receiving touchdown of the game. At halftime, Blacktips 16, the Brooklyn.
At 3:30, those two guys at tackle. Antoine Lowry has played some guard. He's at 3:30. So they can pound the ball a little bit here, keep the clock moving, and use their size and their depth to try to control the game the rest of the way.
Expect to see a lot more out of Andre Dixon and Lyle McCombs. Lyle McCombs actually getting the bulk of the carries for the Blacktips in the first half, but Andre Dixon is a man that we talked about coming into this game. Really the game breaker for this Blacktips squad out of the University of Connecticut, a local boy Played his high school football at New Brunswick High School. As Kenzel Doe back to receive. Drew Basil did a phenomenal job in the first half for the Blacktips. Will kick this away to start the second half. So Brooklyn looking to get their offense ignited. Kenzel Doe back to receive. A knuckleball fielded at about the 20-yard line by Doe. For the first time, Doe gets some running room, and he's tackled down at the 35-yard line. A 10-yard return, the biggest one of the game so far for Kenzel Doe, and Brooklyn will start at their own 35-yard line.
Doe was actually a very good return man at Wisconsin. A punt return and a kickoff return for a touchdown in college. So he's a guy that if you get him the ball as a receiver, maybe giving him some handoffs out of the backfield or in the return game, he can hit you a home run, and he's going to be lined up to the bottom of your screen right here on 1st and 10.
Kenzel Doe was undrafted, signed on to the Steelers practice squad. He had invitations from the Patriots and Texans. Josh Freeman back under center for the Bolts. Pass is intercepted. And the Blacktips defense comes up big again. It's Derek Morgan on the INT. Still with it. Morgan still on his feet. And he is brought down at the 5-yard line. So on the first play from scrimmage, the Blacktip defense answers the bell again. The 4th turnover for the Blacktips defense.
Just not a good decision from Freeman. They ran him on a bootleg to the far side of the field. He was thinking about running it, and then he missed the fact that he had Jordan Niver, his tight end, wide open. He could have just checked it down to him for about 3 or 4 yards, and he could have turned upfield. Instead, he tried to take a shot about 10 or 15 yards downfield and got picked off. Not a good decision from Freeman. He got a little bit too aggressive, and another turnover sets up the Blacktips.
So the Blacktips defense has been the story of this game. It'll be Kevin Rogers out of Henderson State back under center in the shotgun for the Blacktips. 1st and 7. The give to Dixon. And he is down to the 4-yard line.
I would keep hammering it. They got the big set in right here with the tight end. And they're going from the shotgun, which is what they like to do. They've been running a lot of read option from that look. And keep pounding the ball right into the middle of this Bolts line. That is the one concern Terry Shea had about his defense. Undersized, not an NFL-sized line. They're quick, but they're not huge. And this would be, I think, a good opportunity to try to pound the ball up the middle.
So Trevor Barlow in the backfield with Kevin Rogers. Barlow gets the handoff. Barlow trying to find his way up the middle. And he is in. There is the official signal as Trevor Barlow barges his way in from 4 yards out for the score. A late call there, but it is confirmed a touchdown for the Blacktips. And now they decide if they want to go for the extra point or go for 2.
They're going to go for 2. That turned into a bit of a rugby scrum down there for a minute, didn't it, Sid? They got the whole offensive line trying to push Barlow across, and they got him just enough. And right now, the Blacktips are in control. And they're going to try to add to the lead here. They already had one successful 2-point conversion in the first half.
We talked about the Blacktips defense, the story of the second quarter. Well, the story very early on, picking off Josh Freeman on the first play from scrimmage here in the third quarter. As the Blacktips go for 2, Traylor goes to the end zone and is tipped away. Pass intended for Andrew Apuku. As you get a look here at the replay of the touchdown.
Yeah, so once again, it's the same type of set. They're in the shotgun. They run power up the middle. And look at that rugby scrum. Look at the offensive line getting a hold of Barlow, the running back, and pushing him the last 2 or 3 yards. The initial push wasn't that great, but I like the way the tackles circle right back around and kind of push Barlow across. And he kept on running, kept churning those legs. Nice, tough, physical run to put the Tips up 22-0.
Credit Les Brown, the tight end number 88. Line up on the outside, but came in to join that rugby scrum. as the B-Tips now take a 22-0 lead, cashing in on an early interception. And the Brooklyn Bolts still trying to get that offense in gear.
Now, I see Freeman standing on the sideline, and he's playing catch right now with Jake Heaps, the other Bolts quarterback. And as bad as Heaps' one series was, Freeman's now really started to struggle, and I wouldn't be surprised if we got another look at Heaps.
Ball takes a bounce away from Doe. Doe still picks it up, trying to gain some yardage. And squirts out to about the 35-yard line, so Kenzel Doe making something out of nothing there. And the Bolts will take it from the 35-yard line, and a return of 14 yards as Josh Freeman Stu will indeed come back under center for the Bolts.
Yeah, he's changed his cleats. He's not going with the neon green cleats in the second half, but it didn't help him on that first play from scrimmage, and he threw that interception. So and back into the I formation here. You're down 22 points, but I think you just need to get something positive on first down. You can't be thinking about getting all those points back right away.
So Freeman goes to the outside. The pass is complete. It is a gain of 5 yards. Out to Deshaun Fox. Fox with his second reception of the game.
Yeah, it's a quick hitter to the right. You'd certainly like to see that. That's what we were talking about at halftime. Quick passing routes. Get the ball out quickly, whether it's a screen or a slant. That was just a little stop route. And get something positive on first down. Build some momentum and mix up the run and pass.
So 2nd and 5, positive yardage on the first play from scrimmage on the second drive for the Bolts. With their work cut out for them, they go outside again, and the pass is complete to Adam Drake. It's a gain of about 3.
It's a little later than you'd like to see it. In that first series, I think we should have seen it. But, a little bubble screen that time, doing the same type of thing. Extension of the running game, trying to stretch the defense out wide because they're crowding the box. And now you're in that third and manageable spot. 3rd and 3, 2.5 yards. And this is going to be an important play for the Bolts, given where they are in this game right now.
Thus far, the Bolts have registered 1 first down, and that coming in the first quarter. Correction, 2 first downs. So be on 3rd and 3. Freeman drops back, passes complete for the first down. Finding Ricky Collins. That's the first time we've mentioned his name today, Ricky Collins. At the 43-yard line, an exceptional story for Ricky Collins. This is a player who at one point during his collegiate career quit football because his father had a stroke, went back to his hometown in Texas to tend to his father, eventually would sign on with Texas A&M Commerce, which set school records, attract NFL scouts, and then signed a deal with the Green Bay Packers as Freeman fumbles, recovers it. It's going to be a significant loss as Freeman smothers it at the 40-yard line. It is a loss of 14 yards. And again, the wind, the wetness, the elements do continuing to cause havoc.
Yeah, they tried to run a screen pass to Harris back on the near side, and Freeman just had it slip right out of his hands. And that's the same way the Blacktips scored 2 points on a safety in the first half. I don't blame him going back to Harris. Showed great hands on that prior pass play, pulling in the 3rd down reception. But the attempt to complete another short pass to move forward on first down, the weather had other plans.
2nd down, they go to the draw play. Hand off to Perkins. Ladarius Perkins up the right side. And a nice gain for the running back Perkins.
It got all those lost yards back there on 2nd down, so it'll be about 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 10 there. And they faked the screen that time after intermediate passes in the last 4 or 5 plays, and they went with a draw. And that's the type of creative play calling that makes a lot of sense for Terry Shea. You throw to set up the run sometimes, and that's what he was able to do there, even coming off a busted pass attempt in the prior possession. But still, because they gave up 14 yards moving backwards on first down, 3rd and long right here, and this is an obvious passing situation. And probably 4-down territory here, Sid. You don't need to get all 11 yards on this play.
Joe Don Duncan in the backfield Freeman looking outside. Goes out for Perkins, and Perkins not going anywhere. Excellent job by the Blacktips defense, forcing a fourth down.
Yeah, you're certainly not going to go for it after that play right there. A loss of 6 yards on the play. And, again, that's the linebacking core sniffing out screen. You don't want to get too predictable. That's Philip Stewart, who played for the Boston Brawlers last year. Terry Shea and J.D. Johnson coached him there. He diagnosed that play nicely and was able to get a hold of Perkins and drop him for a loss.
Royce Adams, wide receiver, back to receive for the Blacktips. Adams, who spent time with the Cleveland Browns out of Purdue. Cody Webster punts it away. Adams muffs it. And who has it? They're going to say it is Brooklyn ball. So the Bolts catch a break as Adams muffs the punt. And Brooklyn will have it. Lionel Smith recovers for the Bolts, and they will have it at about the 4-yard line. And an excellent opportunity now for Brooklyn.
This game's been about who makes the fewest mistakes so far. And that left-footed punter with that reverse spin, something a lot of NFL teams now want because it mixes things up. It's a different look for the return man. I'm not sure if that's what happened there, but it certainly played to the Bolts' advantage.
So it is 1st and goal at the 6-yard line. Brooklyn with a prime opportunity. And I think we have a timeout called by the Blacktips. So the Blacktips on defense calling a timeout. So the Brooklyn Bolts, for the first time really all evening long, Stu, catching a big break on the muff pumped.
Yeah, remember, they haven't been in the red zone since the first quarter when they turned the ball over. And this is going to be a critical possession. They're down 3 scores. They're as close as they've been to the end zone and to points all day long. And the question here for Terry Shea is, does he put this opportunity in the hands of his quarterback? Does he let Josh Freeman try to throw for it, given A, the trouble they've had in the exchange on snaps, and B, the number of turnovers that have been committed when they put Freeman in passing chances, or do they try to hammer it in on the ground? And I'm a little surprised that we haven't seen more of Ladarius Perkins running the ball here in the second and third quarters, but this may be an opportunity to get him in the end zone.
Well, we saw it on the last drive before the muff punt. They put Joe Don Duncan, one of the tight ends, in the backfield trying to beef it up a little bit, see if they do that here as well. So they'll have 1st down and 6. So a prime opportunity here for the Bolts with their work cut out for them. The Blacktips defense has been the story of the game, and we'll see if they could muster up another big stop here. This would be the most impressive. Freeman under center. Freeman gives to Perkins. Perkins trying to dance around the left side, and he is snuffed out. Not sure if he even gained any there, losing his balance, and then finally being caught up to by the D-line.
Yeah, here come some bigger bodies into the game for the Bolts. They just brought Joe Don Duncan in. They like to use him as a fullback in short yardage situations. Perkins stays in the game. And on 2nd down and goal, they're going to spread it out a little bit more here. They're going to go 3 wide. You got Adam Drake in the slot to the right, and now they're going to go from the shotgun.
So Freeman in the shotgun, Duncan to the right of him. Fakes the pass, gives to Duncan. Duncan around the right end. And he is tackled at about the 5-yard line. So some trickery there, Stu. You've been calling for it, looking for that misdirection. They finally do that there. The pass to Joe Don Duncan, but again, the Blacktips defense up to the task.
Yeah, we've seen a little bit of misdirection in the second half. The first play of the half was a bootleg rollout to the right. This was the same thing. It was a designed rollout off play action for Freeman, but a nice job by the Blacktips defense gang tackling Duncan 5 yards short of the goal line. And after a run and a short pass play, net nothing, the Bolts are looking at 3rd and goal from the 5. And this may be a spot where you try to isolate one of your bigger bodies on the outside and take a shot that way, because at the moment, the Tips defense has looked pretty stout.
Ladarius Perkins in the back. As Freeman goes to the corner of the end zone, the pass is caught. It is a touchdown for Brooklyn. Brought in by John Harris. Harris going to the corner, and Freeman hitting him on the fade.
Yeah, you got your guy isolated there at the bottom of the screen. He's the tallest receiver the team has at 6'2". He's 218 pounds. They got him one-on-one. Freeman threw him the fade, and Harris went up and caught it. He showed those great hands on a third down catch earlier in the third quarter. They went back to him in the corner of the end zone, and he's the Bolts' first points of the night, and now you got to go for 2.
So Freeman and the offense are going to stay on for a 2-point conversion attempt. Freeman rolling to the right, goes to the corner of the end zone and is knocked away. So the 2-point conversion attempt goes for naught. But the Bolts are on the board. Josh Freeman going to that corner fade, bringing up Brooklyn's first 6.
Yeah, there's been a lot of play action in this half, and that time they didn't get cute at all. They said, we got a one-on-one shot, and we're going to take it. And they went to John Harris in the corner of the end zone, and he pulled it in. And he was a good player at Texas. He was a 1,000-yard receiver back in 2013, his senior year. He was the first Texas Longhorn receiver to do that since 2009 when Jackson Shipley did it. He was converted to tight end, so he's turned himself into a good target.
We're going to step aside, and when we return, Bolts will be kicking away to the Blacktips. We'll be back here on ESPN. Back here at MCU Park in Coney Island, Brooklyn, where the Brooklyn Bolts have gotten on the board as Josh Freeman finds John Harris in the corner of the end zone to give Brooklyn their first 6 points as they will kick it away through Ty Long. Royce Adams back to receive for the Blacktips. Adams fielding it cleanly, trying to go around the right side, has some running room as Adams is brought down at the 36-yard line, and that's where the Blacktips will start up the offense. So, Stu, finally, Brooklyn getting on the board, capitalizing off their real first break of the game, a muffed punt, and turning that into 6 as Josh Freeman showing that touch going to the corner of the end zone.
Yeah, we've had 28 points in this game, Sid, and they have all come off of turnovers and short fields. And so Freeman finally taking advantage. Nice little pass and a good athletic play by Harris to pull in the touchdown. And if you're the Bolts defense, you've got to be thinking turnover. Get aggressive and try to be opportunistic.
Kevin Rogers going to the pass, and it's dropped.
That was Les Brown, the intended target, and he was a basketball player pretty much throughout high school, only played about 1 year of college football. And according to his coach, J.D. Johnson here at the Blacktips, you wouldn't know it because he has the body and the skills to be a really good side end. He thinks he may be the best weapon on this offense. 6'4", 260, big build. He's a good rebounder, and usually has good hands, but on a night like this, you can forgive a few drops.
Also an excellent blocker. Played an instrumental part in Trevor Barlow's last touchdown that gave the Blacktips at the time a 22-0 lead off a rugby scrum as Rogers in trouble, and that's going to be grounding. See the flag fly.
Yeah, they certainly threw that flag from the referee in a spot which would suggest grounding unless there was a receiver in the vicinity. And he threw that right into the ground as that was a busted play from the start. And I'm a little surprised to see back-to-back pass plays here.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot credit to the Brooklyn defense creating that pressure, but you said it.
They're going to throw that on the Bolts. We do not have a mic, but as a personal foul against Brooklyn. And so what could have been a third down and perhaps 10 or more is actually going to end up being a first down, and they're going to walk the ball right up to midfield.
So I'm not sure, but I think, and I don't want to speak on a turn here, but I think it may have been roughing the passer.
That would be a really frustrating penalty because those dead ball penalties when you should certainly be a 3rd and 10.
And that off a busted play.
Right. and basically just a pass into the ground to set up 3rd and long, concede the play. But I think if you're the Bolts defense, your mentality is the same. You feel like at this moment you can play tight coverage. They're not taking a lot of shots downfield, and you can try to get into a passing lane and force a turnover.
So what the Blacktips do here, they've gone pass on the last 2 plays, and they're going to go pass here again, a little dump off for Lyle McCombs, and McCombs are at the left side, and another flag on the play, and this one might be coming back. It's going to be holding on the Blacktips.
Yeah, sometimes when you try to set up those short passing plays, you have linemen who basically hold the way they would on a run, and that seemed to be what happened there. And sometimes you have receivers as well who aren't maybe the most accomplished blockers. They haven't spent a lot of time working on that. And so when you're throwing a little swing pass to the flat, they're maybe cheating a little bit to try to get their back a little bit of extra space to maneuver, and now you're looking at 1st and 20.
So the Blacktips, who caught a break off a busted play and a roughing the passer penalty, now commit a penalty that drives them back. 1st and 20 now. So with under 6.5 to play here in the 3rd quarter, the Blacktips with a 22-6 lead over the Brooklyn Bolts in the season opener of the 2015-2016 FXFL. And movement on the line, and it looked to be on the tight end, Les Brown.
Yeah, sure was. That'll be a procedure penalty. And I got to give the Blacktips credit, because prior to these 2 back-to-back penalties, hadn't seen a lot of mistakes tonight from them other than the drop punt. On offense, they've been very efficient. Not a lot of penalties, no procedure penalties. But you see a little bit of pressure there from the left side of the line, and maybe getting into Brown's head a little bit, and he jumped early.
And that's what we were waiting to see, if that was going to be on Jameel Merrill, number 51, for baiting him, but no, it was on Les Brown. So that pushed them back another 5 yards. 1st and 25 for the Blacktips.
Bolts, if I'm the Bolts here, I'm aggressive. I mean, they're showing blitz in the linebacker spot again. They've got Scott Lutris, who's up over the B gap, and I go get him.
Rogers goes to the side, and they're going to say no catch and incomplete. It was intended for Nigel King, and King again just another case of the weather, another case of the elements, just could not corral that ball.
Yeah, you got to catch that ball, though, at some point. And they had some space there for him at the near side. It was about 5 yards off in the coverage. It was a smart play to throw him a screen, get him some space to work with, and he just couldn't pull it in. And frankly, they're lucky it wasn't intercepted off the deflection.
The way that we've seen the ball being bobbled around, it must be like a bar of soap right now. And again, we're talking about the rain. It is driving rain here at MCU Park in Brooklyn. But it is also very windy. It is very cold. Not the ideal passing conditions, as they now go on the ground for McCombs. So McCombs driving up the middle for about 2. And that'll bring up 3rd and 25. As we approach 5 minutes to play here in the 3rd quarter, you're watching the FXFL Game of the Week, the Brooklyn Bolts and the Blacktips, here on ESPN3. Sadiq Faruqi and Stu Johnson. The defense, Stu, of the Blacktips, the story of the game, amassing a 16-0 halftime lead off 3 turnovers in the 2nd quarter. And then here in the 3rd quarter, off the first play from scrimmage, intercepting Josh Freeman and cashing it in on a short yardage touchdown. Brooklyn coming back, capitalizing off a muff punt, and that's where we stand.
And this is a 3rd down and 21, and so I would imagine you'd play pretty conservatively here and just throw something short.
Pass complete to Robert Johnson, wide receiver out of Mississippi State.
So here you go. You got 4th down, and this is where I think an underrated part of the game has been manifested in the first half. Special teams, because Drew Basil's come in, and on 3 separate punts, he's pinned the Bolts from around this part of the field back inside their own 10. And at a night where all the points have been scored on short fields off of turnovers, literally all 28 of the points, being able to pin the Bolts back deep is a huge, huge thing. And he's going to try to do it again, punting in the opposite direction for the first time in the second half.
So Drew Basil will punt this one away. Kenzel Doe waiting at about the 25-yard line for Brooklyn. So the Bolts defense, helped by some penalties, come up big, and I think I saw a flag fly. So we'll see what this one is about.
Yeah, I think they got a piece of that punt, and it was partially blocked, and it only got to the Bolts' 40-yard line.
So we're going to step aside here with just over 3.5 to play in the third quarter. The Blacktips lead the Bolts 22-6 on ESPN3. Back here at MCU Park in Brooklyn, New York, Brooklyn Bolts and the Blacktips, season opener of the FXFL, the second season of the Fall Experimental Football League. We're pleased you could join us on ESPN3. Sadiq Faruqi and Stu Johnson as the Bolts scoring on their last drive to get on the board with possession here down 22-6. They pitch to Perkins. Perkins trying to get up the right side. And he stays inbound, so the clock will continue to run. And let's talk a little bit more, Stu, about Ladarius Perkins, because Coach Shea very high in him, talking about his ability to get inside the tackles, run outside, get that edge. And we have seen shades of that this evening. He has been a very reliable ball carrier for the Bolts.
Yeah, the one thing that we have to talk about tonight is give some credit to the Blacktips defense, because they have really been stout up front. And Perkins has tried to get to the outside. He has on a couple of opportunities. This is a very good player. He was second-team All-SEC in his junior year at Mississippi State, fifth all-time in rushing yards there. But tonight, he's only been able to go in fits and starts, and the running game has just been non-existent for Brooklyn.
That was Manessa Garner on the carry. That's about the fourth carry of the night for Garner. We talked about him getting those situational carries. Generally a third down back. He's got big, strong legs, just good on low runner. And barging ahead for about a pickup of 3 there before he stood up. But again, you said it, the Blacktips defense, and in particular, the line has been very stout, and just not allowing those running lanes for the Bolts.
Well, who's their guy in the second half? It's John Harris, and he's down at the bottom of the screen. If you're going to throw on 3rd and 12, he may be your target, number 16.
So 3rd and 12. Freeman stepping back, going over the middle, and the pass is dropped by Joe Don Duncan off the safety valve. And the pass is incomplete, and Brooklyn goes 3 and out.
I want to get that man some gloves. That's a tough night to be cashing it with the bare hands. Duncan, mainly a fullback, and as you said, that time was sort of the check down option, and would have only had a couple of yards anyway had he pulled it in.
But again, it just speaks to the pressure, Stu, that the Blacktips defense has applied, especially up the middle. They have not allowed the Blacktips really any running lanes or any of those intermediate passes in the middle. As Brooklyn will punt this one away, almost blocked. Excellent job there by Brandon Reddish. As Royce Adams is smothered at about the 4-yard line. And the Blacktips will start deep from within their own field with just under 2 minutes to go here in the third quarter. Blacktips with 16 second-half points, spearheaded by their defense. A safety, a fumble recovery in the end zone, and an interception, rather a fumble recovery, which they would turn into a touchdown with 5 seconds remaining in the first half. Then here in the third quarter, off the first play from scrimmage, intercepting Josh Freeman, and then later on capitalizing from 3 yards out. They have a 22-6 lead, 1:45 remaining in the third, as they will start from their own 3-yard line. And at this point, again, in the last offensive possession for the Blacktips, Stu, we saw them go with 3 consecutive passes. I think this is going to be a more run-heavy drive for the Blacktips.
Well, when you're backed up like this, it probably should be, and that was a good first down run. Got him 5 yards. A little bit of breathing room here for the quarterback, Austin Traylor. But when you're operating out of the shotgun in weather like this, it's never easy, right?
The give is to Lyle McCombs up the middle for a gain of about 4. Lyle McCombs, Andre Dixon, Trevor Barlow, a good trio of backs for the Blacktips, each bringing their own unique dimensions to the backfield.
Yeah, I did some asking around, and he's actually tonight. Dixon is wearing number 33, so that's what the Blacktips told us. So he'll be in there with the dreads at some point. That's how you can spot him. He's the UConn guy. Right now they got Barlow in the backfield on 3rd and short.
Barlow scoring the last touchdown for the Blacktips.
And a drop for a loss right there. That was a really nice play by Lionel Smith, the defensive back who saw the run play coming there and I think came through untouched across the line and made the stop in the backfield.
So that'll bring up 4th down. So a good, stout possession for the Bolts on defense. And that'll force a punt for the Blacktips. So Brooklyn down 22-6. We'll see good field position for this upcoming drive with 21.3 seconds remaining in the 3rd quarter. From rainy, cold, and windy MCU Park, generally the home of the Brooklyn Cyclones, the short season affiliate of the New York Mets. It is the home field for the Brooklyn Bolts as the Bolts and the Blacktips open up the 2015-2016 FXFL season. And we're glad you can join us on ESPN3. Sadiq Faruqi and Stu Johnson on hand here at MCU Park. The Blacktips holding a 22-6 lead.
And if you want to know why the clock is stopped, we have no idea. I don't know what the stoppage in play was. I didn't see anyone call a timeout. But we're going to have another one after this punt as well for the end of the 3rd quarter. There's going to be some pressure here on Bassel because he's punting from the back of his own end zone. This is just catch and kick. And the Bolts are coming to get it.
Calling for a fair one and some soccer action here at MCU Park. As Michael Lee just kicking it ahead up to about the 45-yard line.
You know, the New York Cosmos play here, too.
New York Cosmos, one of the 3 teams that call MCU Park home, and Michael Lee confusing himself as a soccer player, the officials having none of it. And Brooklyn still will have good field position here as they will start this drive at the 40-yard line. Scoring on their second offensive possession off the 3rd quarter with under 10 seconds to go here in the 3rd. We're going to launch a drive that will put them back in the conversation of this game, down 22-6. As the ball is loose on the ground, and it looks like the Blacktips have it. Off another botched snap. It looked like a Blacktip player was all over, and he was. So for the second time in this quarter, from the first play from scrimmage, a turnover caused by the Blacktips defense. They have been the story of the game, and that is how the 3rd quarter will come to an end. When we return for the 4th, it'll be Blacktip ball. You're watching all the action on ESPN3. Back here at MCU Park in Coney Island, Brooklyn, for the start of the 4th quarter between the Brooklyn Bolts and the Blacktips, the season opener of the FXFL, the 2nd season of the league, as the Blacktips, the defense forcing yet another turnover. And they will start another botched snap, but Austin Traylor will just dive all over that. And then again, we have referenced the climate, the weather elements all game long, but it bears repeating. It bears hammering home. It is raining harder as the game has progressed. The wind has picked up. It is cold, not the ideal elements to hold onto the ball. Stu, to my estimation, that is probably the 7th botched snap that we've seen here this evening.
Yeah, I think you just got to give some credit to Traylor for falling on top of that ball, too. It might seem like a small thing, but it's a heady play, and it's the type of thing the Bolts have been unable to do. When the ball hits the ground, they're giving it up.
Oh, it's a great point. It is a good play because if he doesn't and the Bolts recover, score a touchdown, they're right back in this game. It is a 22-6 lead for the Blacktips.
Excuse me, Sid, it's only a 2-possession game right now, so the very least you want to do is hold serve here. Don't turn the ball over in your own end of the field. Now looking at a 3rd and long, which has been a familiar thing for both teams tonight. That, I think, has to be the first thing on your mind if you're calling a play here, or if you're Austin Traylor getting set to execute it, is be smart. Don't force anything.
Austin Traylor and Kevin Rogers, the 2 quarterbacks for the Blacktips. Coach J.D. Johnson telling us yesterday that he was going to mix it up. He was going to see who had the hot hand. And Traylor has gotten the majority of the reps. Pass complete up the middle for Lyle McCombs. As Traylor making another smart decision. Let's give credit to Austin Traylor. He has been a steady presence at the quarterback position for the Blacktips. He understands that this game has been dictated by his defense. And he has made the right plays, made the smart plays. And he has his team in possession here, up 22-6 early here in the 4th quarter as the Blacktips will punt it away. Kenzel Doe back to receive for Brooklyn. It'll be Drew Basil, who's done an excellent job all game long, Stu, of pinning Brooklyn back all evening long.
It's funny, guys, hasn't punted the ball since high school, and he comes here to his first FXFL game. He's doing no place kicking, he's doing all punting. It's been the type of game we've had.
Another booming punt from Drew Basil, and it's going to trickle out. Another excellent job by Basil.
By my count, that's the 4th he's knocked out of bounds inside the 20. Just a great punt that time, and I believe that ball's going to be spotted at the 10 or so. 43-yard punt there from Basil, and angling it away from a guy who's a dynamic returner in Kenzel Doe.
You know, it's funny, Stu, because you and I, for the audience, we're sitting by the side of the field. We are under a tent, so we are sitting by the sideline where the Blacktips are. So many times, given the fact that we do provide some shelter here with this tent, the Blacktips players will come here and have a lot of their banter. On that last punt by Basil, all of them were like, oh, it's MVP right there, MVP. So that just gives you a sign there of what kind of credence they are giving to their punter Drew Basil, who really has made a huge impact on this game, Stu, pinning Brooklyn back. They have started the majority of their possessions from inside 15 yards, and it's really paid dividends for this Blacktips defense.
Well, he's been our MVP, too, because he's told us about roster changes and number changes, how much time's on the clock.
On 2nd down, a run play up the middle for Brooklyn.
And so the Bolts now have Jake Heaps back in at quarterback for the first time since the beginning of the 2nd quarter. And he's now coming off the field after that last toss play. He's actually going to get the play call here from Terry Shea. But he and Freeman both appear to be getting some looks here in the second half, but we haven't seen a lot of Heaps. So this is an interesting change in the 4th, down 2 scores. And he's probably going to have to pass here, looking at about a 3rd and 7.
So Brooklyn, like they have for the majority of this game, really pinned back by the combination of the Blacktips special teams and the intense pressure that they have provided up the middle. The pass is incomplete. Intended for Joe Don Duncan.
And play never had a chance. It just never had a chance. And this defensive line for the Blacktips, which I don't think they knew what they had kind of coming into this game. You talk to the coaching staff, J.D. Johnson, well, I'm not sure. I don't know these guys all that well. They played tremendous football in that 3-4 scheme. They brought a lot of pressure off the edge of their linebackers. They've gone with a couple of blitz packages from the secondary, and they put a lot of pressure on both Heaps and Freeman.
A lot of familiarities, too, between these two coaches. Of course, J.D. Johnson serving on Coach Shea's staff last season with the Boston Brawlers, as having some trouble fielding that cleanly is Lyle McCombs. But he just manages to smother it at the 46-yard line, where the Blacktips will start their next possession. We will step aside. Blacktips with a 22-6 lead on the Bulls. We'll return here on it. Fourth quarter action here from MCU Park in Brooklyn, New York. The FXFL game of the week, Brooklyn Bolts and the Blacktips. Blacktips starting this drive with a 22-6 lead. As a pass is incomplete for Nigel King on the sideline. And Stu, again, I know we brought this up earlier, but right now, for the fans that cannot see our broadcast position, we essentially have, I would say, 40% of the Blacktips roster standing behind us, trying to gain shelter under the tent.
Well, they're yelling, run the ball. They don't like to see the incomplete passes stopping the clock. They're cold, they're wet, and they got a lead in the fourth quarter, and they want to see the offense keep that clock moving.
And you know what's cool about this kind of a league, this kind of a situation with these players, as a pass is tipped away, out of bounds. Excellent job there again by Manny Esprit, a player we talked about, really covers a lot of grass for this Brooklyn Bulls defense. But you know what? We were talking during the break. In this kind of a league, in this kind of an environment, a lot of these players, they're not going to make it in the pro ranks. Some are. Some are going to find their way back to the NFL. Some are going to eventually get themselves on a radar where they will find themselves on an NFL roster. But what we're seeing here are a lot of players who, you know, are going to work regular professional jobs. And I think you were just having a conversation, Stu, with some of the players telling you what they've been up to during their off seasons.
You got some guys working at delis. You got some guys driving limos. You got some guys giving football lessons, doing some coaching. Right, it's a semi-professional thing. You're here in the fall, and you're getting paid, and you're also getting a chance to get new stuff on tape to show NFL teams. But a lot of these guys who have their college degrees are trying to put those to use, trying to get a job, trying to keep on moving with their lives, and this is their passion, this is their love, this is what they want to come back to whenever they have a chance to do it. This is where they want to be, and that's what this league does, and that's what's great about it.
The league is doing a great job, Stu. Again, we mentioned this throughout the course of the broadcast, this being the start of the second season now of the FXFL, and again, this is a platform for these players who either have been on NFL rosters in some capacity or just trying to put themselves on the radar of an NFL team or, you know, somewhere in the professional ranks. This is giving them an opportunity to showcase themselves. And, you know, right now we're sitting at 3 teams, but this league, the way that it's planned for its sustainable growth, this thing is going to grow. The radar is going to grow. And this is an opportunity that players prior did not have a chance. Once they got cut by an NFL team or, you know, if they didn't get an invite to a mini camp or a training camp, they didn't have any other avenues to put themselves on a professional radar.
Yeah, it was a matter of working out on your own, trying to stay in shape, but you really couldn't get NFL-style game reps. You didn't have new stuff to put on tape and show NFL teams. And now with this league, you're practicing within a system that has NFL coaches for a large part. You know, Terry Shea's a guy with extensive NFL experience. So you're practicing 4 or 5 days a week. You're getting in a game setting about once a week, and you're given a good opportunity to get your stuff seen. On that last punt, it looked like Doe fumbled it out of bounds inside the 5, but there's a bit of a discussion here over what's going on with possession, and I think there may have been a penalty of some sort, and the Blacktips are keeping possession. I'm not sure what that was.
So the Blacktips are going to keep possession here. It's going to be a first down. So, but again, going back to the point, and again, we talk about this with many different industries, many different areas of life, and the impact that the internet has had on all walks of professions. As Barlow on the carry goes to the right side, snuffed out a pickup of 3. The internet, combined with what the FXFL is doing, the fact that we're on the internet right now through ESPN3, make no mistake, there are NFL scouts, there are NFL front offices that are watching these games, that are watching the tapes, and they're going to see a player make a play that's going to make them say, hey, who is that? Who is that number 88? We need to get on the phone with them.
These front offices aren't just plugging a VHS in anymore either, right? They have enormous video databases. This stuff is uploaded immediately. The coach's film is available for teams to look at and evaluate and have their scouts take a look at it. And so that makes it much easier to make quick decisions and bring guys into practice or bring them into camp based on what they see here.
Second down for the Blacktips. Trevor Barlow in the backfield with Kevin Rogers. Rogers, who had a cup of tea with the Houston Texans, as Barlow pounding his way up the middle. A gain of 7 for Trevor Barlow. Hard, low running there for Barlow. And against two, we have a lot of the members of the Blacktips standing behind us, of course, appreciating what Barlow did right there and clearly showing their support in their own manner.
Well, third down here, and I think if you're the Blacktips, there's no reason not to run the ball twice and just try to force the ball across that first down marker. And they've got a physical offensive line. I mean, look at big old number 70 out there. Look at the size of these guys. You got Antoine Lowry at guard there at 330. I mean, run behind that big fella. Run the clock and try to run power and try to get those yardage here, the yardage necessary on third down.
So there third down, Barlow again trying to go around the right side.
Got him.
And it looks like he has enough for the first down.
And that's what it is. You pull the left guard, you run a power play to the right, and you have the numbers, and you've got the size, and you move the sticks. And I'm a little surprised we haven't seen more of that from both teams tonight, but especially the Blacktips because of the size of that offensive line.
Let's credit Trevor Barlow. We've seen some good, hard, solid running out of him out of Mount Union College Division II school. And Trevor Barlow is showing some good prowess in between the tackles. And again, we talked about what NFL teams look for. They are looking for runners that can run in between the tackles. And that is something Trevor Barlow has shown off here tonight.
And Mount Union's actually produced a couple of NFL players. It's out in Alliance, Ohio. Not a big school, but Pierre Garçon went there. Cecil Shorts went there. It's on the radar.
Barlow gets the carry again, going right up the middle. Gang tackled for a gain of about 3. And as a ball loose, heard some whistles there. And it's going to stay with the Blacktips. Fourth quarter here at MCU Park in Brooklyn, New York. It has been a cold, windy, and rainy affair between the Brooklyn Bolts and the Blacktips. The FXFL Game of the Week here on ESPN3.
Got about 6 minutes left to go here in the fourth, so this is going to be a lot of ground game. I don't see any reason to put the ball at risk here and keep running the clock, and we're starting to see the Blacktips take more and more time between plays here. There's not an official play clock, so they're going to try to run this down as much as they can.
Jason Isom, who has had his name called 3 times this evening, gets the carry. Up for a gain of about 2 or 3 yards. We talked about the Blacktips backfield, Stu, as the player is down for Brooklyn. Myle McCombs, Andre Dixon, the player we mentioned at the top of the broadcast. Trevor Barlow, who we've seen get extensive short yardage carries. So we're going to step aside, a player down for Brooklyn. Blacktips up 22-6. You're watching all the action on ESPN3. Under 5.5 to play here in the fourth quarter at MCU Park in Brooklyn, New York. The shaken up player for Brooklyn was Everett Dawkins, lineman. Spent some time with the New York Giants out of Florida State University. As it'll be 3rd and 8 for the Blacktips. Trevor Barlow in the backfield, joining Kevin Rogers. Rogers looking to throw a wobbly pass, is caught, or is it? It's dropped by Kelsey Pope.
Now, Pope was all alone that time. I mean, the pass fluttered on Rogers. It was sort of a duck coming out of his hand. But there was nobody in the vicinity of Pope. I don't know why. I mean, the play action wasn't too convincing. The back wasn't even around when he faked the handoff. But Pope had an opportunity to get the first down, just couldn't hang on to it. Got to look at the replay there. I mean, there was some room there. He had the first down yardage had he secured it.
And again, Stu, we talked about the ball being a bar of soap this evening. We have seen so many botched snaps, dropped intermediate passes, and again, we see another drop pass there. And again, it is just an indictment on the elements that we have here tonight, here in Brooklyn, New York.
And kind of a no man's land here, and they're going to go for it on fourth down.
So Rodgers stepping back to throw, goes over the middle. The pass is caught. It is Les Brown.
I've been waiting on him all night, and he runs that route right over the middle of the field on fourth down. A great pass down the middle of the field from Kevin Rodgers, and he gets Brown right near the goal line. Look at his body. Gets position there on the inside, uses his big frame to box out the defensive back, battling with Mylon Hicks that time, got good position and made the sliding catch, and now he has the Blacktips right at the doorstep inside the 5.
We've been waiting for that all evening long out of Les Brown, and now the Blacktips have an opportunity to put this game away. It is Barlow barging his way up the middle. Is he in? He is down at about the 2-yard line.
Yeah, I like the confidence, though, that the Blacktips have in their offensive line. That was the type of play that's worked for them well at the goal line a couple of times tonight. And they hold their guard there on the left side, Fionde Marisma out of American International. He went to the right, and they went up the middle on the handoff, and they're now just 2 yards out. I would go right back to it, keep the clock moving, and a touchdown salts this game.
Barlow had a short yardage touchdown earlier on in this half. Gets a direct snap, trying to wrestle his way in. He's brought down at about the 2-yard line. So some trickery there by the Blacktips, but the Brooklyn Bolts holding up firm. That'll bring up third down.
Yeah, I got a player down for the Blacktips. That's Chad Columber, offensive lineman, who's lying on his back near the end zone. And the staff's going to come out to look at him. Now, that offensive line, I mean, I don't know if you can pick one MVP tonight. You heard some of the Blacktips players thinking maybe their punter, Drew Basil's on that list. But if you could give it to a collective group, I mean, the defensive and offensive lines for the Blacktips have been they've been dominant. They've won at the point of attack on both sides tonight. And it's a little interesting because I think they were more confident in the offensive line in that matchup when they had the ball. I'm not sure they were aware of how stout the defensive front was going to be. And tonight, throughout the game, whether it was against the run, or whether it was forcing pressure on Freeman when he was trying to pass the ball, they've been very disruptive. And offensively, they've got a lot of size. And I would be surprised if this team wasn't able to run the ball a lot, even in better weather, or just with the number of 4, 5, 6 guys they have weighing 300 pounds and then up to 325, 330 when they go play Hudson Valley. I would imagine that's a formula that can work as well. Deep staple of backs, physical line, quarterbacks who make smart decisions, tight ends who are dual threats. Brown can be an inline blocker. He can go out and receive passes. And that gives you a strong basis and a good offensive identity.
Chad Columber, the player down for the Blacktips, and you bring up a great point just about the different aspects of this team and what brings about a successful football team. We mentioned it all evening long, yet jokingly talking about the MVP punter, Drew Basil, and really for the majority of this evening, he has kept the Brooklyn Bolts at bay, pinning them deep, punt after punt after punt. But then you look at the job that their interior linemen have done, their interior linebackers, creating that pressure up the middle, not allowing Brooklyn many running lanes through the middle, force them on the outside, and having the speed to get there at the point of attack. And then, of course, what they've been able to do on offense with their offensive line and the stable of running backs that they have. As you get a look there again at Chad Columber.
Columber's a big loss. I mean, 6'7", 328. You hope he's okay because he's been scouted left tackle tonight. And they're going to have to bring in a couple of reserve linemen here on this play, and they're still right at the doorstep, 2 yards out on 3rd and goal. And replace him on that left side of the line with Deshaun Johnson. He's now in at left tackle from New Jersey's William Patterson Division III school.
Now Jason Isom. Good, strong, short yardage back in the backfield with Rogers. Isom gets the carry, trying to get it through the middle. He is down at about the 1 yard line. So an excellent job there by the Brooklyn Bolt interior lineman, Scott Lutris in particular, making the play there. And that'll bring up 4th down.
At this point, where you are in the field, they're going to go for it. I mean, even if you don't get it, Bolts have to go 99 yards. They're down 16 points. I guess you could say the field goal, A, gives Basil a chance to try his place kicking, and B, could make it a 3-score game. But I think you got a big line here, and you want to prove you can run the ball in short yardage, and they're going to take a timeout perhaps and think about this one a little bit.
We're going to step aside. 1:59 remaining in the 4th quarter. We'll be back here on ESPN3. Come back to you after the 2-minute warning here at MCU Park, Coney Island, Brooklyn, the scene of the action. The FXFL season opener, Brooklyn Bolts and the Blacktips. Jason Isom lined up next to Kevin Rogers. 4th and 2. The give is to Isom. Isom fighting his way. It is fumbled. Let's see what they call it.
He didn't get there. He's short.
So Brooklyn comes up with a big stop here with 1:50 remaining in the 4th. The Brooklyn defense coming up huge in a late yard situation. Mylon Hicks, number 33, at the point of attack.
Now Hicks got toasted on that pass play over the middle of the field earlier in the drive to set up the goal-to-go opportunity when Les Brown caught that long 4th down pass. This time on 4th down, he's right in the middle of that defensive stand, and it was impressive because it looked like Isom had some momentum. He was falling forward. He's a big back, tough to tackle at 6 feet 235, but they got him.
Heaps back on the field. Jake Heaps on the field for the Cyclones, looking for Deshaun Fox. As Brooklyn takes the field with just over 1:45 to play here in the 4th quarter. Again, the story of this game, Stu, has been the defensive effort by the Blacktips, scoring 16 points in the 2nd quarter, spearheaded by turnovers, and then forcing another turnover, an interception on the first play from scrimmage, picking off Josh Freeman, and then scoring from 3 yards out on that drive. The Blacktips defense really spearheading the way to this 22-6 lead.
And trying to play it safe. Just a little run play there and not much doing. And we came into tonight talking about Josh Freeman and what he brings to the league. But tonight, it's what the Blacktips have taken away. And the turnovers on botched snaps, some to Heaps, some to Freeman. Freeman made a critical turnover with just seconds to go in the first half that allowed the Blacktips to score their first offensive touchdown. Another turnover in the first play of the second half set up another offensive touchdown on the ground, and that sort of put the game away.
So Jake Heaps in the game, throwing on 3rd down, and it's picked off, and it'll be a pick 6 for the Blacktips, as Matt O., linebacker out of Dartmouth. Stu, you've been calling his name throughout this contest. A heady player out of Dartmouth, getting the interception off the tip, and that will ice this game for the Blacktips.
Yeah, ice is the right word. He's been around the ball all night, and right here, a look to the right, comes back over the middle, and that pass chips off of the hands of Harris up into the air, and O is right there to collect it and get into the end zone untouched. He's been a good run stuffer. That time they drop him off into coverage, and he collects a pick 6. Turnovers have been the story of the night, and maybe that's a fitting conclusion to this one.
So now Drew Basil we have referenced, and the Blacktips players have referenced as the MVP of the game, gets to pad his MVP credentials as a place kicker. Point after is good. And that gives the Blacktips a 29-6 lead over the Bolts. And really capping off, Stu, what has been a dominant defensive performance by the Blacktips.
Yeah, their defense has been superb tonight. And if we could spin it forward maybe and take a look at the upcoming schedules for the two teams tonight. You know, this is a big first win for the Blacktips. And I think, as I was saying to you a little earlier, I think it established kind of their offensive identity. And so when they go and play Hudson Valley, and then when they come back here towards the end of October and play Brooklyn, and then they go on the road to play Hudson Valley in November, they have something they can feel pretty good about. And at the moment, that's a dominant offensive line, an opportunistic defense that plays physically, that tackles very soundly, and that's forced a lot of turnovers. That's an impressive showing tonight for this group.
So
Bolts,
the Blacktips
meanwhile, are going to try to put things back together and go play a new opponent in a week.
To my estimation, unofficially, that's, the 6th turnover caused by the Blacktips defense?
Sounds about right.
It's been a really dominant performance by them coming into MCU Park. And again, we talked about a team that was put together, and the coaching staff only meeting their players about a week and a half ago and having to really put this team together in a short period of time. And a lot of credit goes to J.D. Johnson doing an excellent job of putting this team together, getting everyone in the right places, and then really putting on a masterful performance here in the first game as Deshaun Fox runs out a nice long kick return, a 36-yard return for Fox. And the Bolts will have it with 52.3 seconds remaining here in regulation. So the Blacktips scoring 16 points in the second quarter off a safety, recovering a fumble in the end zone, then getting a turnover, which they would score on a touchdown pass with, I believe, 5 seconds to go in the second. That really set the tone for the remainder of this game, Stu. As Heaps dumps it over the middle. A loss of 2 as Manessa Garner on the catch.
Al said this is the first professional win in head coach J.D. Johnson's career. Do you give him an ice bath or no?
The players are joking about that behind us, giving a Gatorade bath at the conclusion of this game, and I don't know if Johnson's going to want that.
I don't think tonight's the night. I think he would prefer to not get pneumonia. Yeah, it's been a chilly one tonight. For the Bolts, you look forward to having better weather, better conditions to play in going forward, and you got 5 games left in the season. You can make the most of those.
As the handoff goes to Manessa Garner. And that's going to do it for this one, as time's going to run out as the Blacktips coming to MCU Park put on a dominant defensive display as they will walk away from this game 1-0 with a 29-6 win over the Brooklyn Bolts. Do your thoughts.
Well, we saw early on tonight that the weather was going to have an enormous impact on this game, and the Blacktips took full advantage. As you mentioned a couple of times tonight, Sid, they were opportunistic on defense. They forced the Bolts into mistakes, and mistakes deep within the Bolt zone territory, and then they took advantage. They scored on a safety, they scored on a fumble recovery for a touchdown, and then when they got short fields towards the end of the first half and the start of the second half, they turned both those possessions into touchdowns, and they really never gave the Bolts much of a chance tonight. We talked a lot about Josh Freeman, but he was unable to get comfortable, didn't have a lot of time to throw the ball, made some costly mistakes and turned it over, and at the end of the night, the Blacktips dominated with some help from the weather, won at the line, and emerged with a convincing 29-6 victory in the season's first game.
It was cold, it was rainy, it was windy, and the Blacktips defense came to play. An impressive opening season